Hey guys, you've got Ben here from Overland Trail Guides. It is a beautiful, beautiful winter's day here in Northern California. We've got the oak, the green hills, the Douglas fir, and the redwoods behind me, but that's not what I wanted to talk to you about. You know, there's been a lot of chatter as of late on the internet about the so-called overlanding scam. And if you've watched our channel in the past, then you'll know that the vast majority of our videos are focused on our adventures, camping, all of that good stuff. However, with the amount of people that are getting into overlanding, car camping, whatever you want to call it, I think it warrants a deeper discussion. And maybe, just maybe, I can convince a few of you out there that you don't need to spend thousands of dollars to enjoy this, the great outdoors. So you know, this begs an even bigger question. What the heck is overlanding? Now I want to be clear, I'm not here to preach about what overlanding is, what it isn't, who's doing it right, who's doing it wrong. Internet shaming is not going to help anyone. However, I do think it's helpful if we look at it as a spectrum. So think of it like this. On the one end, you've got your car campers and they're driving 5-10 miles, maybe a couple hours down a dirt road to find their camp for the weekend. And that's their overlanding experience, and that's totally fine. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you have the folks that are going multi-month journeys, or maybe they're doing the overlanding thing full time, and that's totally cool too. And then in between, you've got folks kind of doing all sorts of stuff, maybe a 2-day trip, a 5-day trip, a 2-week trip, 100 miles, 500 miles, 1,000 miles, whatever it is, it's all part of the overlanding spectrum, right? There is no help in terms of shaming somebody because they don't have the flexibility to go out full time or to go on a months-long trip like some people. They're doing what they can do given their life circumstances, right? But let's jump into this craziness a little bit further. Let's talk about what I like to call the gear trap. You've got big brands, influencers, and media outlets all doing what they do, trying to make a buck off of you by selling you their products and gear. And I want to be clear, it's not just overlanding that's negatively impacted by this. It's every single outdoor activity and pursuit out there, whether it's mountain biking, hiking, mountaineering, hunting, kayaking, you name it, the message is always the same. Buy more of our gear and somehow, just somehow, you're gonna enjoy this more. And I'm sorry, I just don't buy into that. And when you think about it, it really makes sense. Not that buying more gear is gonna make you happier, because I assure you in the long run, it's not. It's just gonna drain your bank account, but rather, we live in a capitalist, consumer-driven society where the common ethos is more is better. You've got services like Amazon Prime that are delivering products to our houses in a day or even less sometimes. The message is driven into our head every single day. Convenience is king. We've got things like single-use containers, disposable gadgets, quick fixes, all meant to make our lives as the consumer as simple and as hassle-free as possible. But there's a hidden cost. These sort of behaviors often come at the detriment of our planet as well as our pocketbooks. And yeah, we've already covered this in some detail, but I think we just need to emphasize it. The overlanding industry is no different. We're constantly told that we need to buy gear, and lots of it, just to be happy and to create memorable experiences and adventures out on the trail. And let's be real, it's easy to get caught up in that. All right, guys, let's just admit it. We've all seen the photos and the videos of those perfectly kitted out rigs with new rooftop tents, light bars, roto packs. Everything is perfectly dialed in. It looks like something straight out of an ad for an Overland Expo catalog. And then you go over to social media, YouTube, Instagram, you see the influencers over there. They've got new Land Cruisers, new Gladiators, the newest 4x4. Everything is perfectly dialed in, and let's just be honest, it's hard not to get caught up in that hype. You know, if you go camping with your friends enough times, inevitably you're gonna run into the gear junkie. You know, that person that takes great pride in everything that he or she bought and outfitted to their vehicle, and suddenly you find yourself asking the question, do I need all of this stuff to enjoy this, the great outdoors? Spoiler alert, you don't. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying all gear is bad. There's gear out there that definitely makes sense for certain situations and applications, and an even smaller amount of that gear is what I would call a necessity. You think about things like food and shelter. You want to keep your food fresh and safe, and then for shelter, you want to stay dry and warm when you're out on the trail, don't you? Now, if you're serious about a particular outdoor activity or pursuit, having the right gear can make a huge difference, right? And let me give you an example. I've been mountain biking since middle school, and I'm still an avid mountain biker today, 3 decades later. If I were to go to Walmart and buy a cheap bike off the shelf from there and try to ride the trails that I ride, some of them right behind me in these hills here, that bike would be destroyed by the end of the week, and I would probably end up in the hospital. It would be a total disaster. And sure, there's definitely people out there that would balk at the amount of hard-earned cash that I drop on my mountain bikes, but here's the thing, it is worth it. I've got a bike that can handle the rigors and the abuse that I throw at it, and it's not like it's collecting dust in the garage. When I'm here at home and I'm not working and out on the trail, I'm hitting 20 to 40 miles of dirt every single week. And in fact, I think I'm gonna go hit the trails later today. But here's where I draw the line. Assuming you have some sort of vehicle to get out there, overlanding absolutely doesn't require the same level of investment, at least not to get started. You don't need a decked out rig just to hit a few miles of dirt and go camping for the weekend. But the problem is this, we are constantly being conditioned by consumer culture to think that we do need that kitted out rig just to go camping. And from cars to clothing to hobbies, there's always some product being marketed out there to fill some need that we didn't know we had. It's that same Amazon Prime mentality that we're all getting caught up in. Instant gratification, a quick fix, except this time it's a lift kit, a light bar, a rooftop tent, maybe a dual battery setup that you're gonna spend a couple grand in. But you know what? If you're buying a battery management system from top tier brands, that $2,000 investment can easily eclipse $5,000. The truth is, you can have an amazing camping or overlanding experience without going into any sort of debt. And sure, there's definitely gear out there that can improve your experience too. A good example is a propane or diesel heater. If you're someone who lives somewhere like Maine, Montana, Colorado, and you find yourself doing a lot of cold weather camping, having that heater can be an absolute game changer. But is a heater necessary for everybody out there? No way. Back in the 19th century, when people were crossing the Sierra on foot or horse, or maybe they were trudging through the deep snow in the Yukon in search of gold, I assure you, they had no propane or diesel heaters. In fact, they just had the most basic of provisions. They would cut their wood down on the trail to burn for their fires, and they would have things like wool and animal hides to keep them warm and dry. So I want you to do this. Forget everything that consumer culture has ingrained into your head, and remember this instead. It comes down to your situation and what makes sense for you. And all of those big brands out there, the media, the influencers, all trying to push their stuff on you, just remember this. They don't know you, and they certainly don't know your situation, so take everything, and I mean everything they say, with a grain of salt. If you go to Overland Expo, you are going to encounter two conflicting messages. On the one hand, you're going to walk the aisles of the expo and be surrounded by all of these glitzy booths, and you've got people trying to sell you anything and everything. But if you go to a seminar with a respected overlander, somebody like Dan Grech, you're going to hear a message more like this. You don't need to spend tens of thousands of dollars on gear just to go overlanding. Effectively, the best overland vehicle and gear is what you already own. Imagine that. You don't need some fancy vehicle wrap that's color matched with your MaxTrax 20,000 lumens of Baja Designs lights or a $5,000 battery management system. So let's start with the basics. What gear do you actually need to get started with overlanding? Well, it's actually pretty simple. So you're gonna need a vehicle to get you out there, clothes to keep you warm and dry, a place to store your food and keep it fresh, and a place for shelter and to sleep. That's it. Everything else can come at a later time once you've got some experience under your belt. So here's what I recommend. Start small and use the gear that you already have. And if you don't have essential gear like a sleeping bag or a tent, chances are you've got a friend who does have that gear, so borrow it from them. Then start going on some trips. You can figure out which gear works for you, what doesn't work for you, and you can start making informed decisions and prioritizing your purchases and upgrades based on what you found out. Just don't do this. Before you go on these trips, jumping straight into purchasing gear and spending thousands of dollars on gear, because I assure you what's going to happen is you're going to waste your hard-earned dollars buying purchases on stuff that you don't really need, and you're also wasting the Earth's natural resources. Here's the thing, guys. People have been driving their vehicles down dirt roads to go camping for decades, often in pursuit of other outdoor activities like hiking, fishing, kayaking, whatever it may be. Suddenly, when we reframe this concept of what overlanding is, we find that you don't need a $100,000 rig just to get out there. Now, if you remember at the beginning of this video, I was talking about the overlanding spectrum, and I want to dig into that a little bit further. So as a reminder, on one end of the spectrum, you've got your car campers, people that are driving a few miles down a dirt road. They go camping for the weekend. Awesome. Opposite end of that spectrum, you've got your long distance travelers, your full-time overlanders. They're doing things like crossing continents, visiting places like Morocco, Siberia, the Arctic Circle, Ushuaia. They're probably traveling well-known routes like the Pan American Highway, Pacific Crest Overland Route, Silk Road. But this is what I want you and everybody else out there to know about overlanding. Don't let anyone else's definition of overlanding define or hamper your experience. So whether you're spending the weekend camping at Bowman Lake, Trona Pinnacles, or Alabama Hills, or maybe you're embarking on a week-long adventure, do what works for you. And maybe you don't have a super flexible schedule and you can only get out 1 or 2 times a year for 2 or 3 days at a time. That's fantastic too. And for the few that are lucky enough to embark on this overlanding thing full time, I really hope you realize what a position of privilege you have. You have this platform that allows you to share and inspire others, but please don't look down on others because their life situation is different than yours. You know, at the end of the day, it's not about all that fancy gear or the miles traveled or even the destination. It's about being human and doing the things that exhilarate us as humans. Adventure and exploration, making memories, enjoying nature, going to new places, meeting new people, and spending time with the people that we care about. So whether or not you're car camping for the weekend or planning an epic months-long journey across an entire continent, don't let that noise distract you. Keep it simple, get out there, and let your experiences guide you. After all, the best adventures don't come from a magazine, an ad, or a catalog. They come from you, and they come from here, especially when you push yourself. Till next time, I'll catch you out on the trail. Be safe and Godspeed.